In your 40s, you've done a lot of things right. But there's one question you can't keep avoiding. Can I actually stop in 10 to 15 years? Am I truly on the right path toward retirement? Your 40s are a very unique stage of life. You're no longer in your 30s telling yourself, I still have plenty of time. But you're also not close enough to retirement to clearly know how much you'll need. This is the age where many people feel stuck in the middle. Your income is higher, but so is the pressure. Family, kids, responsibilities. Everything seems to pull you in different directions at the same time. And in the middle of all that, saving for retirement often gets pushed to later. The truth is this: your 40s are not the time to panic, but they're also no longer the time to delay. The decisions you make during these 10 years will determine whether your retirement feels calm or constantly stressful. In this video, we're going to talk about the retirement strategy for your 40s, how to accelerate your savings without sacrificing your current life. If you're in your 40 or approaching this stage soon, make sure you watch this video to the end. Before we continue, leave a comment and let me know. How old are you? And at what age do you want to retire? Now let's start with the most important question. Why your 40s are the decade that quietly decides your entire retirement plan. Why your 40s are the quiet turning point that decides your retirement. Your 40s are a very unique stage in your financial journey. This is no longer the time when you can comfortably tell yourself, I still have plenty of time. But you're also not close enough to retirement to feel an urgent pressure to act right now. Because you're stuck between those two states, your 40s become a quiet turning point, the decade where many retirement outcomes are decided without people even realizing it. According to research and recommendations from leading U.S. financial publications, by age 40, someone who is on track should have saved about 3 times their annual income for retirement. That number isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to answer one very practical question. Does the money you've already saved still have enough time to grow? In your 30s, having about 1 times your income was enough, because you still had 30 to 35 years for compound growth to do the heavy lifting. In your 40s, that time window shrinks to roughly 20 to 25 years, and that difference matters. A dollar invested in your 30s can multiply many times simply because of time. In your 40s, each year becomes more valuable, not because you're too late, but because time is no longer abundant enough to fix mistakes just by waiting. This is also why many people in their 40s experience a strange feeling. Their income is higher. Life feels more stable overall. Yet their concern about the future becomes clearer. If you haven't reached the 3 times income milestone yet, your 40s are not the time to panic or take reckless risks. They are the time to move from emotional saving to strategic saving. And if you're already close to or past that milestone, your 40s become an opportunity to accelerate intelligently, because income is often at its strongest during this stage of your career. So, put simply, your 40s don't decide whether you're rich, but they do decide whether your retirement will feel calm or constantly stressful. And to understand how to use this decade well, we need to start with a very practical principle: how to increase savings without making your current life feel suffocating. The 15-20% rule: accelerating savings without making life miserable. When it comes to retirement savings, there's one number that often makes people in their 40s hesitate: 15-20% of annual income. At first glance, that sounds like a lot, especially when you're juggling family, kids, housing, and all the other growing expenses of this stage of life. The natural reaction is, there's no way I can save that much. But here's the key thing to understand. The 15-20% rule is not about suddenly cutting your lifestyle in half. It's a long-term strategy designed specifically for your 40s. Financial experts generally agree that if you start saving early and stay consistent, 15% is often enough to reach a basic retirement goal. 20%, on the other hand, creates an extra safety margin, especially important if you started later than planned. But the real secret isn't the number itself. It's how you reach that number. The biggest mistake people make in their 40s is trying to aggressively cut spending all at once. That approach usually works for a few months, and then everything slowly goes back to normal. A far more effective solution is automating your savings increases. Instead of asking, "What can I cut?" ask a different question. How can I make sure I never even see this money? One very practical strategy is simple. Every time you get a raise, increase your savings rate by about 1%. For example, this year you're saving 10%. After a raise, you increase it to 11%. The following year, 12%. This approach rarely feels painful, but over time it moves you very close to, and sometimes beyond, the 15–20% range. It also protects you from one of the biggest traps in your 40s, lifestyle creep, where spending quietly rises along with income. If every raise goes toward upgrading your lifestyle, your income may grow, but your financial position stays stuck. When savings increase before money ever reaches your spending account, you're building a system that works instead of willpower. And once that system is running smoothly, something important happens. Saving stops feeling like pressure. It becomes a natural part of life. That's what it really means to apply the 15–20% rule correctly in your 40s, not through sacrifice, but through strategy and smart discipline. Why staying heavily invested in stocks still makes sense in your 40s. There's a piece of financial advice that many people in their 40s have heard before. The older you get, the safer you should be. That advice is often summarized in a familiar formula: 100 minus your age. By that rule, at age 40, you should hold only about 60% in stocks. At first, that sounds reasonable. But in today's reality, many financial experts believe this rule has become too conservative. The first reason is a longer life expectancy. For many people, retirement is no longer a 10–15-year phase. It can easily last 25–30 years or more. That means even if you retire at 65, a large portion of your money still needs to keep growing for decades after you stop working. The second reason is inflation. If your portfolio becomes too conservative too early by shifting heavily into cash or low-yield bonds, the purchasing power of your savings slowly erodes over time. According to many analyses, the biggest risk in your 40s is not short-term market volatility, but insufficient growth to keep up with future living and healthcare costs. That's why the modern view suggests that in your 40s, you should still maintain a high allocation to stocks, typically somewhere between 70% and 100% depending on your risk tolerance and income stability. A more practical guideline many people now use is the 120 minus age rule. By this approach, at age 40, 120, 40, eat at an 80% in stocks, with the remainder in more stable assets like bonds. The key point to understand is this: holding more stocks does not mean gambling. In your 40s, the strategy is not about taking wild risks, but about letting time continue to work for you. If you have relatively stable income, a consistent savings plan, 20–25 years left to invest, then short-term market swings are unlikely to derail your plan. What quietly weakens retirement plans instead is pulling out of stocks too early. Simply put, in your 40s, you don't need to go into full defense mode yet. You need a portfolio with enough growth so that when you reach your 50s, you can begin shifting toward preservation from a position of strength. And to fully take advantage of that strategy, we need to talk about one factor many people overlook: how account structure and employer benefits can quietly multiply your savings. Doubling your savings without working harder. There's a very common paradox in your 40s. Many people work hard and earn a stable income, yet still miss the easiest advantage in their entire retirement plan. That advantage is the 401k employer match. Put simply, a 401k is a retirement account supported by your employer. And match means that when you contribute money, your company contributes additional money on your behalf based on a set formula. A very common example looks like this. Your employer matches 50% of the first 6% of your salary. That means if you contribute 6% of your income, you receive an extra 3% of your salary for free. If you don't contribute enough to receive the full match, you are effectively turning down a guaranteed raise. And unlike missing a savings goal in a single year, missed employer matches can never be recovered. They create a permanent gap in your retirement plan, not only because you lose the money itself, but because you also lose 20–25 years of compound growth on that money. Beyond the 401k, another important tool is an IRA, a personal retirement account that you fully control, independent of your employer and portable even if you change jobs. Using both a 401k and an IRA together allows you to capture free money from your employer while maintaining flexibility and control over the long term. But the most important factor isn't which accounts you choose, it's how you use them. In your 40s, you shouldn't rely on memory or monthly motivation to save. What you need is automation. When money is transferred directly from your paycheck into retirement accounts before you can spend it, you remove emotion from financial decisions.
No willpower.
And here's the surprising part. When saving is automated, you don't just save more, you also feel less stressed. You no longer ask yourself every month, should I put more money away? The system answers that question for you. This simplicity is what allows many people in their 40s to maintain long-term financial discipline without feeling like they're sacrificing their quality of life. And once that system is running smoothly, you're finally ready for the next step, building financial protection so that everything you've accumulated isn't wiped away by one unexpected event. Hi Tori, A Texas, Ari. Point 5. Protecting your assets in your 40s so you enter your 50s from a position of strength. There's a very common mistake in financial thinking. We often assume that asset protection is something you deal with in your 50s or 60s. But in reality, your 40s are the most important time to start protecting what you've built. The reason is simple. By your 40s, you usually have more stable income assets that are clearly starting to accumulate a family and people who depend on you. And that leads to one uncomfortable truth. A major setback at this stage can erase 10 to 15 years of progress, and you no longer have the luxury of starting over the way you did in your 30s. That's why asset protection isn't pessimistic. It's part of a smart growth strategy. The first thing to think about is insurance, not as an investment, but as a way to block your biggest financial risks. In your 40s, you should seriously evaluate life insurance, so your family isn't pushed into financial crisis if something happens to you. Health insurance, because medical costs can destroy a financial plan faster than almost any bad investment, home and property insurance. So one accident doesn't turn into a financial disaster. Next comes something many people avoid: basic estate planning. It may sound too early, but in reality, it's one of the most practical steps you can take. A will isn't about expecting something bad to happen. It's about making sure your family doesn't fall into chaos if it does. A simple, clear will can save your loved ones an enormous amount of money, time, and stress. Finally, your 40s are the decade to start mentally preparing for your 50s. That doesn't mean stopping investments, becoming overly conservative, or living more restrictively. It means beginning to ask a better question. If I want to slow down my work pace 10 years from now, what kind of financial system do I need to build today? When you have an automated savings system, a portfolio with enough growth and a strong layer of financial protection, then entering your 50s no longer feels like a dangerous turn, but like a smooth transition from accumulation to pre-retirement optimization. In other words, your 40s are when you press the accelerator and check your seatbelt at the same time. And that balance is what determines whether you enter your 50s with confidence or with constant lingering anxiety. If there's one thing you should remember after this video, it's this: your 40s are not the time to do something drastic, they're the time to do the right things. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You don't need risky moves. You just need to take an honest look. Are you fully capturing your 401k employer match? Is your current savings rate moving toward 15–20%? Does your portfolio still have enough time to keep growing? You don't need to answer these questions immediately. Just starting to review them already puts you ahead of most people. If you're in your 40s, this is the decade where small decisions carry real weight. The good news is, you still have time to adjust, if you start now. Before you leave this video, do one very simple thing. Leave a comment and tell me, how old are you and at what age do you want to retire? Not to compare yourself to anyone else, but to set a clear marker for yourself. And if content like this helps you see money more clearly, subscribe to the channel. The next videos will continue helping you make financial decisions that are calmer and more grounded. Start today. Not out of fear, but because you want your future to feel lighter.